A time to give. Families who lost breadwinners in COVID-19 need supportive policies and a safety net. The center's stated position before the Supreme Court on paying a standard ex gratia compensation to families of those who died of COVID-19 shows poor appreciation of the fallout of an unprecedented disaster. After initially asserting that such payments were beyond the government's fiscal affordability, although there is a provision in the Disaster Management Act for compensation and externalizing the pandemic as a global, ongoing event, the Ministry has now averred that the issue was the manner in which funds were to be put to use. Clearly, lack of resources would be a legless argument when the center is pursuing expensive redevelopment projects such as the Central Vista. What the government says it wants to do is to deploy funds in healthcare, enhance social protection, and support economic recovery of affected communities rather than give one-time compensation payments rupees 4 lakh or notified ex gratia sought by the petitioners. There is nothing wrong in keeping the focus on provision of essential supplies and additional health infrastructure. In fact, the second wave peak was made considerably worse by poor health infrastructure and low public health expenditure, and a policy failure recorded by the Economic Survey, which called for higher public spending of 2.5% to 3% of GDP on health. But lending a helping hand to families now impoverished should also be a priority. The center, after trying itself in notes on free vaccines, should now spell out its roadmap for a universal public health system. The annual budget included a raft of schemes under COVID-19 initiatives and claimed credit for Atmanirbhar Bharat packages, which together with the RBI's ameliorative steps officially amounted to 13% of GDP. But the above-the-line relief in terms of healthcare and social protection, including cash transfers, or a small share of other spending such as credit provision to several sectors, as per some estimates. The IMF analysis of policy responses says that early in the pandemic, food, fuel, and cash transfers to lower income households came to 1.2% of GDP. With the second wave marked by many deaths and nationwide closures, a review of direct benefits is urgently called for. In court, the Home Ministry has said that confining solutions to compensation would be narrow. It is no one's case that large direct cash benefits are the only good interventions. Families who have lost breadwinners need help, while orphaned children need support. It also does not help that India's pension system is weakening. Bank deposits have low yields, and official policy expects people to essentially fend for themselves. The center should not hesitate to review its tax basket to rely more on the wealthiest to compensate those who have been hit the hardest. A perpetual war. US should have backed Afghan government more instead of pushing how to engage the Taliban. The dilemmas of ending the US forever war appeared to fall heavily upon the shoulders of President Joe Biden, who is now helming his country's quest for the exit before the self-imposed deadline of September 11, 2021, the 20-year anniversary of the WTC terror attacks. While he clearly signaled his intention to remain engaged with the war-torn country by meeting in the first instance Afghanistan's President Ashraf Ghani and chairman of its High Council for National Reconciliation Abdullah Abdullah at the White House this week. The US troops withdrawal since May 1, 2021 in a sense signals the opposite intention. There is no mistaking the Taliban's reaction, especially to Washington's plan to wind down its Afghan military presence. Ever since February 29, 2020, when the US and the Taliban signed the Doha Agreement for bringing peace to Afghanistan, Taliban-linked violence has risen steadily. US intelligence reports have assessed that Al-Qaeda still has a presence in Afghanistan, and the terrorist outfit's decades-long ties with the Taliban have been undiminished. Meanwhile, the situation on the ground is far from inspiring for anyone who hopes for peace in the region. facing tepid resistance from the ANDSF. Now, with ever reducing access to US air support, the Taliban have managed to fight, hold on to, and even take back the territories from the government. This reality begs the question of what new vortexes of violence, terrorist events, and other sources of regional instability Afghanistan might play host to now, and whether the US and Western powers will retain enough influence to prevent events in this regard from spiraling out of control. Closer to home, a sense of concern must be pervading South Bloc as the last US troop carriers left off from Bagram, potentially allowing agents linked to Pakistan's military and intelligence established a freer hand to engage with extremist elements in Afghan, with possible blowback for India. What will become of New Delhi's long-sighted soft power investments into education, training and infrastructure and civil society development? Had the US played a consistently strong hand supporting the Afghan government instead of pushing as hard as it did to engage the Taliban, that might have delayed Washington's exit plans but provided more leeway for the ANDSF to push harder and take enough territory to weaken the Taliban's overall strategic grip. Given the prospect of the ANDSF's fragmentation already occurring in some areas, it now appears more likely that a deal may be forged between the Taliban and power brokers once associated with the Afghan government. This could lead to a Taliban-centric religious council that sets an overall tenor of government based on Islamic law. It permits a semi-autonomous executive governmental power to operate within the